Okay. So welcome everybody. This is the eLearning Network, a workshop on e-learning project management. Thank you all for coming. It's our pleasure to have you on the line here today. My name is Magic and I'm with the eLearning Network. So before we get started, I'll just describe a little bit about who we are and what we do for those of you who are new. And those of you who are returning, I may not have mentioned to you what our mission is, so I would definitely want to cover that for you. So here at the eLearning Network, our mission is really to promote the advancement and adoption of e-learning content and technologies. And we do this by supporting e-learning professionals like you who are also dedicated to creating effective and memorable e-learning experiences. So what does that mean? Well, we want more and more organizations to adopt e-learning, and they do so when e-learning is effective for them. When more people adopt e-learning, there you see advancements in technologies and in techniques, and so it raises the raising tide raises all the boats. And so we're trying to do what we can here at the eLearning Network to ensure that the quality of e-learning that's delivered out there is superior. I don't know if you all love e-learning like I do, but if you've ever taken e-learning that you were just loathed and you couldn't stand it, we wanted to convert that experience into something that people love. I don't know about you, but there's many times when I try to describe what it is I do for a living, and I mentioned that I create e-learning, people either look at me with this glossy look in their eyes, or they're like, ugh, I hate that stuff. And so I don't want to hear that anymore. I want people to say, oh, that's awesome, I love that, I love e-learning, and that's, I'm glad you do that. So that's our mission, and we do this by supporting you guys with free training like this and free job aids and other things. And we're here to support you. If there's anything that you are not able to do to achieve the level of excellence that you want, we've got expert graphic artists and programmers and other folks who can help you at a moment's notice. So just keep in mind, if you ever need help, we're there for you. So enough about us and me. My email is magic@elearning.net, so you have a direct line into me if you ever want to drop me a note or ask me some questions or set up a time to chat for a few minutes about strategies or whatnot. But today's topics are on e-learning production, and we're going to discuss then the job roles that fall into the e-learning production cycle, the costs and time drivers that are largely out of your control, things that affect the time and budget, and we can teach you how to anticipate these things and how to sort of head them off at the pass. But a lot of times you have things that are beyond your control that you need to factor into your plan. We'll then look at source content completeness. How do we look at what is good source content? That affects the time and the budget that you'll need to do your job. We'll also look at the Magic Matrix, I call it. It's the work effort worksheet that I have that helps you kind of evaluate, well, how much work effort do you need to put into what you're trying to achieve? Then we'll look at the production cycle of the standard e-learning production cycle. And finally, we'll wrap up with, well, what are the different development levels of e-learning? There's a difference between a rapid e-learning versus like a complex multimedia e-learning, and there's different levels from 0 to 4 that we talk about. So we'll look at what kind of level is it that you're looking to create, and from there we'll talk to how many hours and how much budget should you allocate to develop these kinds of e-learnings. So hopefully by the end of this course you guys will be have a lot more knowledge than you had coming in, and your projects will be set up for better success. So again, before I get diving into this slide here, I'll go ahead and give you just a few seconds. If you wish to type in any questions or that you have in the chat window, please do so, and I'll be happy to address those questions. And I'll stop at the end of each slide to see if there's any questions that have been asked and answer those. Okay, so first, typical e-learning production job roles. There are other nuances to these job roles. There are other kinds of roles you might have, but generally they're lumped into these categories. Also note that these job roles do not necessarily mean individual people. One person can and often does perform all of these roles at any one time or in one project. So let's say, for example, you're just creating for your own self your own e-learning project. Nobody's giving you any money for it. Nobody's asked you to create it. It's just something you're just doing for yourself. Then you're the project sponsor. You're paying for your time, you're paying for whatever assets, and you're not beholden to anybody. You may also be the subject matter expert. You know the knowledge, the information, or you've researched it and you're writing about it. You're also managing the whole project from start to finish. You're performing the instructional design and writing. You're maybe getting the graphic arts and creating your own graphics or grabbing some stock images. Maybe you're recording the audio yourself as a on a USB headset. and you're programming any little custom interactivities, and you're reviewing your work. So you're doing all those things. Alternatively, if you're like us, you have a team of people who specialize in each of these areas, and so you have a team of folks. Instead of one person spending 80 hours, you have 8 people spending 10 hours each, for example. So spreading the work across multiple experts is one way that you can develop in a more rapid and agile fashion than just having one person have to have all the weight of the world on their shoulders. So these are the e-learning production job roles. Feel free to grab a screenshot of this if you wish. Also, I'll be putting a link to this recording online for you. I promise I will do that. And take a look to study this graphic and think if you have any questions about any of these job roles. And some of you probably are already spending a lot of your time, most of your time, or 80% or more of your time in one of these things. So it'd be interesting to know like which roles you guys are in. So feel free to drop a little note in the window here if you're doing one of these roles more than another. And it looks like Daisy says she has to complete everything in the time it takes all those people to do it. You have to complete everything in the time it takes all those people to do it. I got you. So, okay, moving on to the next slide here. So when it comes to the kinds of cost drivers and things that are out of your control, oftentimes, the quantity of what your e-learning project is. So the time and budget you need in order to complete your project is driven by, well, how many slides are you going to create? How much audio is going to run? How many interactivities do you have? How many graphics do you need to find and put in there and customize? So what's the volume of what it is that your project includes? The second driver that oftentimes is dictated by your clients or your boss or other departments that you serve is the complexity level. Do you want something that's just a Camtasia screen recording and you just put on your headset and you do the clicks and you show somebody how to do a task and you publish it and you're done? Not real complex to achieve that level of e-learning. Or do you have multiple scenarios with branching e-learning where you're having a sales rep pose a question to a customer, and based on the customer's reaction they have choices to make, and it may branch off and get more complex and so on? Do you have simple graphics that are from Shutterstock or equivalent, or are you creating custom illustrations and 3D photorealistic assets? How complex are the various parts of your project? The third item is the completeness of the source content. Source content can be things like Word documents and PowerPoint files and websites and ideas that somebody hands to you that says, I want to create XYZ. The more complete and accurate source content, the less time you have to spend and less money you have to spend on getting your storyboards ready and getting your content ready to produce into an e-learning format. So we'll talk more about that in a second. And the final bullet that I really try to drive home with everybody is this idea of how many revision cycles are you going to have. We have some clients that just love everything that comes out of our shop, and they practically rubber stamp it all, and they just put it out there, and it looks great, and they love it. We have other clients that have multiple stakeholders, multiple reviewers, multiple organizations that are all investing in the same project, and they all have to look at the content and agree on what they like, and sometimes they have competing ideas and thoughts, and sometimes we're told to do one thing and then we're told to do another. So the more times you have to go back in and constantly get everything just perfect and aligned with everybody's different views, that adds time and challenge to a project. So these drivers are out there. So a strategy to handle these kinds of drivers is to make sure you write these down and have these in front of you when you're having a conversation with anybody who's a stakeholder, anybody outside of your group that determines for you how much money and time you're going to be given for your project. You want that person to be happy, and you want to make sure that person is clear on the limitations that are inherent in the design process, things that are beyond your control. And so oftentimes your sponsor is not very savvy when it comes to e-learning production. They have no idea oftentimes what e-learning is or how it's created. They just know on August the 1st I better have a 30-minute course ready to roll, because if it's not there, we have problems. And so if you have that conversation on July the 28th, That's obviously not much time, so you need to explain to the stakeholder, I will get you something in that time frame, but you're going to get one bite at the apple to give me your revisions. So, as long as they're clear on and you're clear on what the expectations are in these areas, then you'll save a lot of time and headache, and you'll be much more successful with your projects. So of those drivers, one of the bigger ones that needs a little more additional explanation is the source content. So oftentimes as an e-learning developer, you will have e-learning source content sort of dropped on you. Maybe somebody gives you a PowerPoint and says, make this in e-learning. Well, that's good. That's something to start with. Other times you may be, if you're working with a really rock-solid instructional design group, they may hand you a storyboard and they just say, I just want you to publish this for me. Just make this an e-learning course. It's already got the narration. It's already got the graphics. Everything's in place. I just need you to get it into, Captivate or Storyline or Lectora or your, tool du jour, and they just want you to assemble it. So these 4 areas of content are how we sort of categorize things. And what you want to do with your stakeholder or whoever is giving you the source content is acknowledge for them that they're handing you content at this level. Either it's none, or it's raw, it's design ready, which is pretty much, there's no gaps in the content. You have everything you need. You just need to pull it together and organize it in a nice flow and just maybe a little bit of light instructional design. Or it's development ready. It's paint by numbers. You've got everything you need. You just need to assemble it. So it's probably going to be generally in one of these 4 categories. And so the time and budgets you're going to want to ask for at the beginning of the project before you start, you want to communicate to your stakeholders that the reason it's going to take how long it's going to take is partly determined by this factor. And if this is something you can't control, you want to make sure that whoever does control this knows that you're going to do the best you can with what they're handed to you, and that the timeline will be based on that. And again, it's about good communication with all the stakeholders involved. Okay. So, any questions before I move on? That was again the source content. If you have any questions about like challenges or issues or how to work with the source content, throw it in the chat window. So next, I think I'm also going to throw this link here into the chat window here. So if you want to look at this or bookmark this on your own, you can. So I'll put it in there for you. So this is what I call the Magic Matrix e-learning development effort worksheet. And when it comes to those job roles I was discussing before, instructional design, content writer, graphic artists, before you begin your project, you want to talk to your stakeholders about what level are they expecting from you in each of these areas. If they're handing you design ready or development ready content, then your instructional design and content writing requirements might be low or moderate. If you're given very little instructional design and content, then you need to budget for and anticipate a higher level of content writing and instructional design. So this is based on a 30-minute course. If you were to write a 30-minute course of like a level 3 complexity, which we'll cover in a little bit, this is of some ballpark time that it may take for you to produce this content. And if you think about it, 30 minutes, if you give yourself 60 hours for a 30-minute course to write the content, you're basically giving yourself 4 hours, if I have the math right, per minute. Is that right? No, 2 hours per minute. That's right. So you'd be giving yourself about 2 hours of labor for every minute of actual narration. That may be a little bit high. It just depends on, you want to have more than you need, and that way, you're not having not enough time. So use these with a grain of salt, but these are some ballpark ideas of how much time and hours you might want to request based on whether it's a high, moderate, or low level of effort. So I like to tell people, when you're working again with people who are not familiar with the e-learning development process, keep it simple. Low, moderate, high. Are you asking me to do a little bit, or a lot of stuff in each of these core areas? Instructional design, content writing, graphic artwork, programming activities, multimedia, and also QC. This goes back to, do you want me to do a lot of QC for you before you look at this thing, or are you going to do a lot of the QC on your end and not be, coming back to me a lot with tons of revisions? So you want to just document these and have your stakeholders agree to, for example, maybe they want to, you look at their content and you both agree that there's low instructional design, moderate content writing, maybe low visual design, but you want to have some really complicated activities. So maybe you go low on the visual or high on the activities. Or maybe you want a great, beautiful course, but you don't want it to be really complex in terms of the activities, so you can maybe go high on the visual and low on the activity. So when you're planning your budget and time, you want everybody to know what is the vision in mind that you have. So some of you may have read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey. It's an old but great book that's still true today. And one of the 7 habits is begin with the end in mind. So much of this presentation is designed around helping you determine up front and document what the end result is that you're looking for and what you're building, and get everybody to agree to that so that you set your timelines to that. And then as your projects change and as scope creep comes in and people start to try to slip in new requirements, you can go back to your original plan and say, this is deviating from the plan, so I need more time and more budget. And this goes back to our mission of how do we achieve excellence in e-learning. It's by understanding and delivering excellence to our customers. And a lot of that is perception based on delivering on our promises to them. So understand what they want, document, commit to that, and deliver that. But anytime you're asked to go beyond that, make sure that they understand the implications in time and budget that go with that. So, you know, they're not just thinking it's your fault, for example, for not hitting their goals. So that's the Magic Matrix. Study that on your own. It's a lot of good information, and it's a great tool that will help you. So the typical e-learning production cycle, some of you guys may already be well familiar with this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but from a global perspective, it starts with an instructional designer. Generally, it starts with people laying out their learning objectives and how the course will be sequenced. And it's already been decided that it's going to be an e-learning project. So this is the e-learning production cycle. It's already been answered in the instructional design phase that you're going to be making this an e-learning course. You need to gather your content and develop it. So that means you go out and you fetch whatever PowerPoints and quizzes and job aids and Word documents and whatever you've got that can be used as fodder and content for your e-learning course. You want to gather all that. You want to map any gap map. You come up with any content gaps, map them to where it goes to your learning objective, and go about getting those gaps filled. And that can happen by conducting subject matter expert interviews. So part of the development process is getting with your SMEs and saying, hey, I need help. I don't have information on this topic. Help me get that. Then there's also technical and creative writing, depending on the kind of course you're writing. So there's some writing that needs to be done to produce like your audio narration or on-screen text or both. And we also include in this process writing of the storyboard, which would have your narration and your graphics instructions and any other blueprint sort of instructions to put your course together. Then there's the graphic design process. Once your content's pretty nailed down and you know the visuals that you want to have support your content, you go about creating your graphic artwork. Sometimes, now I'll stop here for a second to say that this is not necessarily a linear fixed path. You might, there's an old expression that a picture is worth 1,000 words. You may see a chart or a graphic or something and say, oh, that almost says exactly perfectly what I want to say in my course. So you can start with that graphic and write your content to support that graphic, as opposed to writing your content and then going about trying to find a graphic that supports what you just wrote. So it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing, and you'll go back and forth in any project and between doing graphics first or content first. So this is not about the order in which things are done so much as these are the things that go into the cycle. So, but then generally once you have your audio and your graphics and your storyboard and all that sort of put together, then an e-learning author will come in and put these pieces together. They may use a tool like Storyline or Captivate or Lectora. A few years back, they probably would have used something like Flash natively, or they maybe would have put it in HTML, or you might have just put these directly in your learning management system before the advent of all of these much more powerful, user-friendly, do-it-yourself e-learning development tools. So we call the e-learning author the person who assembles these things. That's distinguished from an e-learning programmer who has a higher level of knowledge and about triggers and variables and functions and can actually really do some pretty complex, cool interactive stuff for you, that usually goes beyond simply assembling the things together and producing a simple e-learning course. So there's an e-learning programming aspect in the production cycle that can be there if you're doing a level 2 or higher course. Multimedia development then also is something that fewer companies do, but more are starting to. That's where you maybe have your own custom photo shoots. You may have your own photorealistic 3D artwork. You may have do some video production, some After Effects, some more kind of fancy development. So that goes on in the multimedia development phase. And then there's developing or deploying the course to your learning management system and testing it and publishing it and sending it to your users. So these are the things that go into the production cycle. There are major milestones that are accompanying each of these different tasks. So depending on your project management tool that you're using, you want to account for these things. And for example, you may have, if you have a 30-minute course, you may break it down into 10-minute blocks and have the first 10 minutes, once it's done and approved and ready to go, assign the e-learning programmers and the e-learning authors to assemble those pieces once the graphic artwork is done. And then while these folks are writing the next 10 minutes, these guys are working on the first 10 and so on. So we could talk more later, and I'll be probably, I'm sure, developing a course on actual using project management tools and showing different scenarios of different ways you can develop courses in a very agile format. This course is mostly on the production cycle and establishing time and budget. So if you're interested in learning more about agile project development, just drop me an email and I'll let you know when we have that course ready. Okay, so now we've talked about the different job roles, the kinds of drivers that affect the project, time and budget that may or may not be under your control. The other big aspect is what's the complexity of what you're going to make. So we at the eLearning Network look at levels from 0 to 4. A level 0 is not the kind of work that we do here. Normally that's the kind of work that if you can do a level 4, that's what you do on your own. And you might get some graphics from us or use our support resources, but we don't ever get people calling us and asking us to do this level. It's pretty much somebody with a USB headset using something like Storyline or Articulate Presenter or maybe Captivate or Lectura or whatnot, and they have all the skills they need to knock out a course that's that's acceptable and works. And it's pretty quick, pretty inexpensive, and there's a lot of e-learning out there that fits that description. So we list it here so you know that that's a level 0. Level 1 is oftentimes called rapid e-learning. Usually we'll have professional audio, sometimes professional, sometimes not, but also it has at least some decent stock images that are synchronized and to the narration, and they usually have some light graphic design treatments. They definitely look like a step above what a computer novice could do with level 0. It's more like an intermediate level person using those same kinds of tools or pairing up with a couple of graphic artists maybe helping them out. Level 2 is what we call standard e-learning, and this is where you have a graphic artist who really creates some great looking visuals and illustrations to make the course feel custom and be very kind of lively and vibrant. A programmer also creates some custom activities that matches the design aesthetic, so it's all very cohesive, nice looking course with some more interesting kinds of activities. Level 3 is what we call deluxe, and that's where you really have graphic artists and programmers just raising the bar on the complexity of what they're doing, spending more time and more attention to those details. And then a level 4 is where we bring in our multimedia experts to create some really impressive stuff. So I'll just take a break here and actually show you an example of what these levels look like, because again, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and an e-learning course is probably worth 5,000 words. So let's just take a quick peek at what these levels might look like. Let me just mute this a second. So this is I put this link, I believe, in your chat window, but I'll put it in here again just to be safe. So feel free to watch this at your convenience and share this link with anybody who wants to see this demo. This goes through level 0. So level 0 course, it talks about how there's sort of a plain, very simple yet elegant looking screen. a simple stock art with a basic shadow treatment and some standard bullets. You know, a little textured background, but nothing really overly complicated. It looks nice, clean, but it's not requiring a whole lot of graphic design expertise. A level 1, you start to get into a little bit more custom look here on the title page. You have a few accents and some different sort of treatments and fonts and things that are going on. So it's just a little bit more attention to detail. Here you might have a split screen here where you have a picture and a box with a drop shadow, image, title, caption, and so on. So it's a little more fancy than the level 0. And then there's some other examples here you can see where here we have a sort of a depth of field effect where it's a little blurred out little icon in the back and a couple of custom icons here. So the level 1 has some simple treatments, but again, it's nothing that's overly complex. And these are examples of templates that we have on our site that you can also buy. They're like 30, 40 bucks or something. So if you see anything in here that you like, feel free to drop onto our shop and pick these up. Level 2 starts to get a little more fancy still. There's multiple different kinds of icons. This is for a financial demo. You get the different kinds like calculator, dollar sign, a little bank, a little pie chart. You have these icons that are specific to the particular topic, and they'll be reused throughout the course when you go to these topics and jump to these areas. You can have like a nice split screen here. We have a nice big graphic at the top. Maybe you have like a little custom header here over some content, again with an icon. This little treatment down here, you can see there's some graphics down low. So it just starts to take on a little more sophistication here, as you can see. Here we start getting into a custom activity, a drag and drop, where you have to take these items and put them in the right priority. And here's some more examples of some custom icons, like for healthcare, for example. Maybe you have an image of a nurse or a doctor and some charts, and it starts a textured background. So this is a little fancier. Level 3 now, we start getting into something that's more of an immersive look. I mean, this is for OSHA emergency planning. This has like an industrial feel. It's got like a sort of a distressed, cool background here where it looks like these guys are sort of stenciled on. We have a custom menu now. We have custom navigation where if you want to jump to these items here, you can add to your e-learning course some custom features like this where you can have a custom navigation. So level 3 starts to get to more complexity still. Maybe there's a custom illustration or graphic that you drop in there. Again, a nice big watermark treatment, and it starts, looks really great. Here's some more examples at the end of this demo of more level 3s, and you can take a look at these at your convenience. But again, activities is a safe or unsafe, a little thumbs up or down, and you drop it in a circle. So some work there. Then a level 4 gets to be sort of the high-end stuff. This is where all bets are off, and it's just very complex, just some of the best work that you'll see that's being done today. You may have, in this case, we have different environments that you can go into. Like maybe there's a workshop scenario where you're in the break room and what's proper break room etiquette. Maybe you're in the office and you're sitting at your desk and you're going to interact with items on the desk and so on. And the idea here is it's more interactive, more visually rich. Here you have, this is a photoshopped 3D background with a human person photoshopped in there. You can see there's like a light treatment. There's just attentions to detail here and interactivities that are just beyond the norm. And so there's some more examples of the level 4 in here. So those are the levels we're talking about when we say how much time and effort are you going to put into your project. I'll have a chart where I talk about how much time and effort should go into these kinds of things generally, but I want to make sure you have a foundation in what do we mean when we say a level 3 or a level 4. Okay. So any questions about the levels there? I see there's not much question going on in the chat window. So it looks like we're moving along at a good clip and no questions. If you have any, again, please feel free to ask. Okay. So how much time and effort is required to do these, to produce e-learning at these levels? Well, we have here, if you're doing a level 0 course, again, recall that one developer with a reasonable amount of computer skill and with the do-it-yourself e-learning tool could put together a 30-minute course. I would allocate an hour per minute. So that should be about right, and give them about 1 to 2 weeks. You may give, maybe 30 to 50 hours, something like that, just depending on the complexity and how long it takes stakeholders to review and give feedback and edit. But generally speaking, it shouldn't take very long, a week or two, to knock out a 30-minute course with one person working on it. When you get to a level 1, that's where, again, on the level chart that we were looking at, you have some more custom graphics. You may bring in an artist for 10 hours. The level of complexity and interactivity, like adding some more quizzes and things, the developer is going to maybe need another 10 hours or so, and then a project manager will be managing these two folks and maybe pulling in other resources, probably working with a voice talent to order the audio. So give yourself a person who kind of manages this to some more time. So if you're doing a level 1, we'd say it's maybe not quite, about 70 hours across 3 people, and give them 2 to 3 weeks to do a reasonably good job of a level 1 course. Level 2 is, again, we add a programmer to do some more of those more complex activities that are more custom. You give more time for your graphic artist, and because you have another person in the mix, you give another 5 hours to the project manager to account for managing a more complex project. And then the e-learning developer is going to be doing even more kind of collaboration with these other people and just producing more complex work, so they get more time. And so you're looking at maybe 140 hours, and give yourself 4 to 6 weeks to do a solid 30-minute course at a level 2. Level 3 gets higher still, and level 4 more even still. And this chart, I'll put a link to this. All this information I'm covering is online in an article on eLearning Network. So let me just show you where that is. And I'll put this link in the chat window here so you can reference all of these details at your own convenience. So that is now in the chat window there. So if you scroll through here, you'll see we talked about the drivers, the complexity level, the job roles, the time estimate, and some cost and week estimates. And then we talk about the source content again. And so everything we've just discussed is online here in